What is up, guys? Rick is here, and today we are going over some more amazing fan-made exotics for Destiny. Now, this is the only series that lets you submit your exotic weapon or armor idea and have a realistic concept art made for it. Now, that's because I've partnered with the artist Benjamin Radiman, who makes these amazingly realistic exotic concepts. His deviant art will be linked in the description down below. Definitely recommend you check it out after the video. Now, I have been on vacation, so it's been 2 weeks instead of the normal 1 week since the last fan-made exotics video. So today we are going to showcase 7 instead of the usual 5 featured exotics by going over all of their perks and how they would fit into Destiny. Remember, all the exotics you're seeing in this week's video came from the comments section of last week's video. After that, we're going to go over how to properly submit your exotic idea and some tips for getting selected. And lastly, we're going to showcase all of the different exotics that were created from last week's ideas. So, without further ado, let's get started. The first exotic concept we're going over today is the Pain Multiplier exotic shotgun concept by Andrial195. This shotgun's exotic perk is Pain Multiplier. Each precision kill gives a 1.5 damage multiplier to the last round in the magazine. Stacks up to 3 times because there are 4 rounds in the magazine. So essentially, if you get a precision kill with the first round of this shotgun's magazine, the last round is going to be increased by damage by 1.5 times. So essentially 50%. And the damage of that last round is going to increase by another 50% for every other precision kill you get with the first few rounds of the magazine. So that is definitely a unique take on the final round perk. I mean, we're all familiar with final round in Destiny, where the last shot of your magazine does more damage. This is really interesting because in some aspects, it's a lot better. If you can actually get a few precision kills with this weapon before the final round, your final round isn't going to be doing like 30% more damage or 20% more damage similar to what it does in actual Destiny. It's going to be doing double the damage. It's essentially going to guarantee a one-shot kill from quite a ways away. However, there is definitely a downside. The downside is that if you never get a precision kill, you never get the bonus. Your final round perk essentially goes away. So you actually, it depends on how well you do with the first few rounds of the magazine that are going to determine how powerful this perk actually is. Again, if you don't get precision kills, you don't get any benefit from this perk, whereas with final round, you are consistently and constantly getting a benefit. Also, obviously in Destiny right now, you can shoot off the final round and just reload one round and then keep getting that final round bonus, but with this weapon that just wouldn't work because the damage bonus comes from the first few rounds. So it's definitely a very interesting take on this perk. On the one hand, the upper power potential of this perk is much higher than final round, but the downside of this perk is also lower than final round, so it's a very interesting give and take with this idea. I definitely like it. Now, the next exotic concept we're going over looks absolutely crazy. The Pegasus Gate exotic auto rifle concept by NDR 700. Now, first things first, this thing obviously is giving me definitely reminders of the P90 submachine gun, and it just really makes me want SMGs to be introduced as a gun type into Destiny. Maybe we'll see that in the Rise of Iron, I'm not sure. But in any event, for this exotic concept, we have the exotic perk called Shield Disruptor. This weapon deals additional damage to shielded minions of the darkness. Now, that is the main perk. The second exotic perk is Laser Pointer. Significantly increased hipfire accuracy. While you're not aiming down sights, you get a laser that marks exactly where the bullets will travel. And I'm assuming this would actually replace the normal crosshairs. Now this is definitely an interesting exotic concept. The first perk where it just does more damage to shielded minions of the darkness is just going to make you want to use this gun more often in PvE activities. And it definitely makes sense, like being able to do more damage to everything with a shield, that's basically everything that you really do want to kill in PvE. I think that's definitely a useful perk. The second one is really where this gun kind of finds its own niche, where this gun becomes unique. That is just massively increasing the hipfire accuracy and then kind of introducing that laser sight. And I think that's such a cool idea. We have a perk that increases hipfire accuracy already in Destiny, but we don't really have a gun or an exotic weapon that is just kind of built around hipfire accuracy. And hipfire accuracy is definitely very useful, especially with something like an auto rifle. You know, if you're doing PvP, aiming down sights, that takes time, so that's going to take away from your time to kill. If you have a weapon like this and you're playing very aggressively and you have extremely accurate hipfire accuracy, and you don't need to aim down sights in kind of closer medium range engagements now because of this exotic perk, you're going to get the jump on those enemies. So that's definitely a very interesting dynamic. I would love to see something like this. Would love to see SMGs introduced into Destiny. Moving on, we have the Maledictus Vitae exotic sword concept by Tyler Williams. This weapon has two unique perks. The first one is a passive perk called Corruption. After not killing any enemies for a period of time, your sword will begin to eat away at your health at a rapid rate. This is complemented by the exotic perk Maledictus Vitae, which is kills with this weapon increase agility, armor, and damage for 10 seconds. And obviously it eliminates the corruption perk. So this is definitely an interesting idea. The weapon itself is very powerful. Kills with this weapon, again, increase agility and armor and damage. That is a very, very powerful trio of abilities. However, this is kind of balanced out by the fact that if you're using this weapon and then maybe you're walking a long way to the next enemy, or you're not paying attention, or you're trying to use swords for other things other than, you know, killing enemies, you're going to start rapidly losing your health. So it kind of has that balancing factor of the negative perk, like a purely negative perk, to balance out the very beneficial perk, which is definitely a very interesting idea. The one question I have is that what if you just switch weapons? Like every time after you get a kill, you simply switch back to your normal weapon. Would this still damage you? And that's really the question. However, if you do have this exotic sword and it really kind of makes you stay on top of switching weapons and being able to use your primary and special weapon as much as you can and then switch at the last minute to then engage the enemy so you can kill them and then not get that health degeneration and then switch back right away after you've killed the enemies, like keeping you really on top of switching your weapons is also definitely a balancing factor and would be a really nice and neat dynamic with this weapon. Next, we have the Infiltrator exotic sniper rifle concept by Bryce Baby. Good one. Now, this sniper rifle has two unique perks. The first one is Unstoppable Force. This weapon penetrates walls and objects. So this is very similar to the pre-patch armor-piercing rounds, but as a main perk for balance's sake. The second perk is Chink in the Armor. This weapon infiltrates and ignores overshields. This includes, but is not limited to, Armor of Light, Blessing of Light, Flame Shield, a Fallen Captain's Arc Shield, etc. Now this does not include Ward of Dawn, Phalanx Shields, Hydra Shields, and that sort of thing. So it actually has to be like an overshield on your original person, not an object that is protecting you. So quite an interesting and powerful idea. Actually reminds me of a Borderlands sniper rifle, the Trespasser, which would ignore shields. And this, again, is kind of the same thing. If you scorch melee and you get an overshield, this thing can still shoot right through it and get that headshot. Now that definitely sounds pretty good and pretty powerful, but if you think about it, there's a lot of sniper rifles currently in the game, the high damaging sniper rifles, that already kill in a single headshot, even through an overshield, even through an activated super, all of that stuff, they kill in one headshot. This weapon is just a different take on that, essentially. Instead of doing so much damage that it kills through an overshield, it just ignores the overshield and does its damage directly to the target. So in PvP it would be less absurd than it kind of sounds originally. However, in PvE it would have a lot more benefits than just the outrageously high damaging sniper rifles. Because in PvE, if you're damaging something like a Reaver Captain, you're going to have to take multiple shots even to take down his shield. This weapon, completely ignoring that shield and going directly to damage the enemy, is going to have actually more of a benefit, I think, than just the really high damaging snipers. Let's not forget that this weapon also penetrates light cover and can shoot through kind of a thin wall at the enemy behind it, can shoot through some things to get enemies that other sniper rifles can't. So with those factors combined, this sniper rifle definitely has an environment, a useful environment to be utilized in PvE and PvP, I think, as well. The next exotic concept we're going over is the Usurper, exotic scout rifle concept by Tyler Williams. This weapon has two unique perks. It has the passive perk Usurpation. Void-based subclasses gain increased agility while wielding this weapon. Definitely an interesting ability, and again it works with all of the different classes in the game. Moving on, the exotic perk is Hail to the King. Inflict increased damage with this weapon to major tier enemies and above in PvE, and in PvP you inflict increased damage to whatever player is in first place in the Crucible. So it goes from a 4-shot kill to a 3-shot critical kill. If you are the top player, this perk does not activate. Now let's start off with the PvE part of this ability, being able to do increased damage to essentially bosses and major tier enemies. Definitely a useful ability with your primary weapon. Usually when you're encountering a boss, you switch to your heavy or you switch to your secondary if you're using a sniper rifle, for example, and then you do your damage with that. But you know, there's a lot of occasions where you run out of ammo or there's more powerful enemies charging you or coming at you while you're trying to deal with this boss, and having a primary weapon that can do increased damage against a boss, against a major enemy kind of coming at you in a boss fight, that is very, very useful. Again, you don't always have ammo for your black spindle, even though you would love that, so having a primary that can function well in those scenarios is definitely a good ability. Now, the PvP part of it, doing increased damage, basically, one shot less to kill the top player in the Crucible. That is definitely an interesting ability, like definitely very interesting. Hard to say if it's overpowered because, I mean, most of the players you encounter, in fact every player, 5 out of 6 players on the enemy team, you are not going to be doing extra damage. It's only that one player to which this actually activates. But when it does activate, you're most likely going to be able to win that gunfight. Like, that is a pretty decent advantage. Very interesting weapon, very annoying weapon. You would definitely not want this introduced if you streamed or you're a YouTuber based on how good you were in PvP, because the people using this weapon would be your absolute worst nightmare, but I don't think it would be crazy overpowered or anything. Definitely an interesting ability. Next, we have the Ariana's Gale exotic machine gun concept by Akwardave. The exotic perk for this weapon is called Gale Force. When fired from the hip, this weapon has an increased fire rate and splits its original bullet damage evenly across a shotgun-like spread of pellets. Additionally, this weapon does not slow you down when held. Now, we've got a lot going on with this perk, so let's break it down. Additionally, just like before when you had the P90 hipfire-based auto rifle, this is going to be kind of a hipfire-based machine gun, but it has a little bit more interesting abilities. The first one is that when you're firing from the hip, you get an increased fire rate, obviously kind of incentivizing you to fire from the hip, but also when you shoot, your bullets aren't going to be normal machine gun bullets anymore. They're going to spread apart like the pellets from a shotgun. So if you have a shotgun, you shoot that thing, you're going to spread apart in that circle with your pellets. Now, this weapon would be doing pretty much the same thing. It would probably have that same circular reticle just like a shotgun, and each bullet it shot would be like shooting a shotgun shot from a shotgun. Obviously not doing anywhere near the amount of damage, but each bullet would break into these little pellets, and the little pellets would do, 1 or 2 damage each, instead of doing, 20 damage the normal bullet projectile with this weapon. Now, those are just hypothetical damage numbers, but it just puts this ability into perspective. Doing that is going to make you more consistently able to land your shots. It's going to make it so that, you know, sometimes when you're playing any first-person shooter, really, we've all had this scenario where you try to hip fire an enemy and somehow all of the bullets just go in the one area of your reticle that wasn't on that enemy. You know, happens to all of us and it's super annoying. You know, spreading all of that damage out with pellets is going to just basically eliminate that from happening and really kind of emphasize this weapon's niche as a hipfire based machine gun. Which I think is really cool, having a close range, you know, aggressively slanted machine gun. I think that's definitely a unique and interesting idea. And the last exotic concept we're going over today is the Marauder's Morphine exotic machine gun concept by It's Low Dawn. This machine gun has the exotic perk, what's yours is mine. When utilizing this weapon, you will not recover health at all, so you will not heal your health if you take damage as long as this weapon is out. However, 1/3 of the damage dealt with this weapon is refunded to you as health. So that ability that you refund 1/3 of the damage dealt and you heal yourself with that is insanely powerful. Like, that is such a useful ability. Every time you land a shot, you're going to heal yourself for a little bit of that damage. Extremely useful in PvP especially, but also in PvE. But again, the balancing factor, and luckily this was balanced out, otherwise it would just, I think, be overpowered, but the balancing factor is that you are not going to be able to naturally recover your health at all when using this weapon. So yes, you may get into a gunfight where you kill the enemy because you were able to regenerate your health and they weren't, and then you have low health because you got into a firefight. That low health is not going to heal. You're going to have to take out an entirely different weapon, and then if you see an enemy and want to use this weapon, you're going to have to switch to this weapon. Obviously, switching weapons takes up time. It lets you more easily be killed by the enemy, so it definitely has a downside. Like, there's a definite downside for not being able to just naturally recover your health. But the upside is that while you're on a roll with this weapon, if you're getting kills, doing damage, especially in PvE, this is going to be really effective. You are just going to be gaining massive portions of health, like much more and much more usefully than you would if you still had that naturally regenerating health. Like, you want to regenerate health in the actual firefight when you're engaging enemies rather than a few seconds after the firefight has finished. So this is definitely an interesting ability. I actually would really like to see kind of how this ability would play out in Destiny, because it seems very balanced, it seems good in certain scenarios, terrible in other scenarios. It would just be a very interesting and unique thing to introduce into Destiny. Now that's it for the featured exotics for this week's episode. If you want to submit your idea and have a chance to be featured in next week's video, what you need to do is simply reply to the official comment I'm going to leave in the comment section down below. So I'm going to leave a comment saying, you know, reply to this comment with your exotic idea, do so, and then Benjamin is going to go through the thread and pick the ideas he likes. Now the first comment will fill up with the 500 reply limit very quickly, so if that happens, please just hit me up on Twitter at RickCacus and tell me to put the second thread, and I will put thread number 2 in as quickly as possible. Don't worry if you're in thread number 2, Benjamin looks at both of these threads. Remember that the replies to these official threads are the only place we look for submissions. Now, as always, my 2 tips for getting selected are, firstly, make sure that your idea isn't overpowered. You know, getting a kill and instantly getting an overshield is probably going to be overpowered for PvP, so try to kind of rein yourself in. Secondly, make sure that your idea is realistic to Destiny. Getting a kill and turning into a dragon or a bear or something sounds cool on paper, but it's probably never going to be introduced into the actual game, so try to make it realistic. And lastly, time to shout out all of the different exotic concepts that were created from last week's video. The first one is the Dance of the Serpent and the Wolf exotic sniper rifle concept by Sean Conboy. Next, we have the Lux Stellarium exotic auto rifle concept by Jovier Ferdinand. We have the Cherry Blossom exotic hand cannon concept by Carlos Rubio. We have the Devil You Don't See exotic auto rifle concept by Explicit Hater. The Yul's Gift exotic hand cannon concept by Gabriel Shaw. The Sidewinder exotic shotgun concept by Schmidt Playz. The Jekyll and Hyde exotic auto and scout rifle concept by Jacob Ramberg. The Cruffix of High Priest exotic scout rifle concept by Sasquatch Plays Games. The Arum exotic sniper rifle concept by Executor Hideous. The Jaggerjack exotic hand cannon concept by Will Brailey. The Sun's Melody exotic warlock chest piece concept by cory. The Black Widow exotic fusion rifle concept by Destiny R939. The Spider's Fury exotic hunter gauntlets by Destiny R939. The Rising Tension exotic hand cannon concept by Helamoroni. The Kostoff PTRS-41 exotic sniper rifle concept by Tactical Shortcake. The Veins of Darkness exotic hunter gauntlets by Rohit. And lastly, we have the Well of Uror exotic Fatebringer concept by Benjamin Radaman himself. Now that's gonna wrap up this week's video. As always, if you want to support myself and Benjamin Radaman and this series, please remember to simply like and especially share this video. If you want to see more Destiny content similar to this and don't want to miss out on next episode of Fan-Made Exotics, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus, that's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.